conflict has been 189 times lower than the daily death rate of Germans and Japanese civilians, which the U.S. and U.K. mercilessly killed during World War II. That's very commendable on the part of Putin. Putin's not a war criminal. That's, we hear that from the ICC. They've wrongly condemned him as a war criminal. If he's a war criminal, then I guess Netanyahu is a war criminal as well, because Israel, of course, has killed a much higher percentage of the Palestinian civilians, over 30,000 Palestinian civilians, women and children, that is.
Prove to me that you are alive.
Well, I thought the same thing. I think it would be much more useful if he were to condemn this escalation and to show that he's different, which I'm hoping he's doing behind the scenes. There's reportedly he made a call to Putin, but Russia has denied that occurred. Supposedly he almost threatened Putin. I don't think that's likely at all. That's not in his nature to threaten Putin when he's trying to do a peace negotiation, which Russia, there's every reason to assume that Putin will welcome and will pursue vigorously in good faith. So I don't know. I think it would be very useful, even if he himself didn't speak. I think it would be very helpful if one of his appointees were to come out and say, this is not helpful. It's not helpful that the Biden administration is trying to sabotage Trump's peace negotiations or present Trump with a hot war with Russia potentially on day one of his presidency. So it needs to end, and or simply to say that on day one, all this goes away. We're going to de-escalate. Trump's going to de-escalate the conflict. He's not going to accept any sabotage attempts. So whatever Biden does, all of those authorizations for the use of U.S. long-range missiles against any Russian targets will end. And if I were them, I would say, and we're going to suspend all military assistance to Ukraine until Zelensky agrees to end the war and for a permanent ceasefire. Which it's Zelensky that's the problem. A lot of people say, well, it's Putin. Putin insists on continuing the war. He could end the war tomorrow if he just pulled out all Russian troops out of Ukraine. Well, that's what he wanted to do, and we said no. Biden said no. He sent Boris Johnson to pressure Zelensky and arm twist Zelensky into rescinding and repudiating the terms of the Istanbul Agreement, in which Russia agreed to exactly that. But the reason, you got to think, the reason that the U.S. has continued the war, I say Biden, really, it's not the U.S., because most Americans have never really wanted this war. We haven't wanted this proxy war with Russia. It's not a popular war by any means. 71% of Republicans, as of like a year or two ago, opposed the war. But it's it's being pursued against the will of the American people, and we need to do whatever we can to stop it. But I agree that Trump should be much more forceful in saying that all this is going to end when he becomes president.
Yeah, all I'm saying is at least, come out and talk to the American people. Come tell us something, man. We're worried. We don't know what's going on. And again, I'm going to put my 5 cents in on with the whole Trump talking to Putin. Look, Mr. President Trump's wife is Slavic. I'm telling Mr. Trump to hop on a plane, fly over to Russia, have some vodka shots with Putin, go to a banya, get your steam on, then jump into some cool water and resolve this thing, man. Like grown men, resolve it. But that's just, in my dreams. Maybe they're gonna do that. Hopefully they will. So what you're a geopolitical expert. to us regular folks, what is this escalation ladder for a nuclear, God forbid, doomsday, and where are we on this escalation ladder?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm not sure what you're talking about in terms of an escalation ladder. Could you be more specific?
Well, from what I understand, there are steps that.
Oh, the escalation ladder. I'm sorry, I thought you were saying
Yes,
ladder. Yeah,
yeah.
so the escalation ladder is, during the Cold War, we kind of explored a lot of nuclear theory, strategic theory, including nuclear escalation. And essentially, there's multiple runs. Obviously, it starts with a low-level conventional military conflict to perhaps a full-scale war that's still conventional. We've updated that to include, cyber attacks would be kind of unconventional unconventional warfare. So major cyber attacks, I think, would be a run above conventional. Then you could escalate to either super EMP attacks that could be regional. I forgot counter space attacks. So counter space and cyber attacks kind of go together, kind of the same level, where it would really disrupt society, perhaps even collapse Western nations. And then super EMP weapons. Those are nuclear weapons that could be detonated high above a country to take out their electronic systems, critical infrastructure. So that's an existential threat that Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran pose to the U.S. And then, of course, nuclear weapons. So nuclear weapons, the most likely first use of nuclear weapons would be non-strategic nuclear weapons, such as in the case of a nuclear demonstration attack by Russia on Ukrainian territory, perhaps against a military target or even a civilian target. Russia, Putin's not bloodthirsty by any means. He's done everything possible to order that no direct attacks be made against civilians to minimize to the lowest possible level the number of Ukrainian civilian casualties. And he's done that quite exceptionally. I've calculated that based on the UN Human Rights Commission numbers of civilians killed, Ukrainian civilians killed by Russia in the war, that the daily death rate of Ukrainian civilians in this conflict has been 189 times lower than the daily death rate of Germans and Japanese civilians, which the U.S. and U.K. mercilessly killed during World War II. So that's very commendable on the part of Putin. Putin's not a war criminal. That's, we hear that from the ICC. They've wrongly condemned him as a war criminal. If he's a war criminal, then I guess Netanyahu is a war criminal as well, because Israel, of course, has killed a much higher percentage of the Palestinian civilians, over 30,000 Palestinian civilians, women and children, that is, since the war in Gaza began. And the war, that war has been ongoing for a year and a half shorter than the war in Ukraine. So I hope that continues. I hope that, we don't see a lot of civilian deaths in Ukraine. I think any deaths in Ukraine are very lamentable, but particularly women and children and unarmed civilians.
Yeah, you said something very important, and I hope that really reaches to people's hearts and souls, that Putin is not, this crazy maniac that's, trying to genocide the whole of Ukraine. What I wanted to ask you is, whenever, like people talk, we say these rockets were raining down. But then when I saw images of this Oreshnik, this thing did not rain down. It seemed like this was like a flash from another dimension. Like this thing looked crazy. I'm talking to people in Russia. They're saying, oh, look, now Americans will see that we are not in the 21st century. We're in the 22nd century, because no one has ever seen anything like this before, and no one has anything close to it. So what is this thing? What the heck is this Oreshnik? How true is it that we don't have anything remotely close to it? Because I myself don't believe that America doesn't have anything to counter that. So what the heck did we see with these insane images of Oreshnik? And do we have anything to counter it?
Prove to me that you are alive.
Well, it's very clear with the Oreshnik IRBM that is almost the ICBM range. I mean, it's a very powerful class of IRBMs with multiple maneuverable reentry vehicles, 6 each currently, which is more than we assessed that the RS-26 ICBM, from which it was reportedly created as kind of a shorter range follow-on weapon. We assessed that that ICBM only had 4 warheads. So the U.S. has consistently underestimated the size and power of the Russian nuclear arsenal, as well as ballistic missile systems. And we had no idea that this nuclear-capable missile that Russia had very advanced conventional warheads that they deployed on those, making them dual capable. The U.S. U.S. ICBMs are not dual capable; they're exclusively for nuclear weapons purposes. We don't have any IRBMs. We haven't had. I'm not sure if we ever had IRBMs. We had the Pershing IIs, of course. Those were kind of in between MRBMs and IRBMs, probably IRBMs, but shorter range. We're just barely fielding MRBM systems that are hypersonic. We've had a lot of setbacks with those. Russia has, Russia and China both have, even North Korea, I think, may have hypersonic weapon systems that are operational. So Russia and China are much more advanced than we are in terms of hypersonic missiles. But you're right. This one was otherworldly. I mean, you watch the clouds, light up with every warhead, and each warhead had 6 submunitions. Again, kind of rod of God type. They were rods that were designed to destroy, not with conventional explosives, but rather with kinetic impact to deeply penetrate underground bunkers, as was the case with this Dnipro, large aerospace weapons production facility. And this is really, I think it was meant by Russia to be a warning to NATO that we can take out any one of your, we can arm these with nuclear weapons, and we can take out six of your cities with each IRBM launch, or we can take out your bunker systems, for NATO command bunkers. We can take out NATO headquarters. We can take out Zelensky in his command bunker. So, we really need to take Russia seriously, even if, I do think that Putin, from what I've heard, has no current intention to escalate to the non-strategic nuclear level. And that's commendable. I mean, that's, I think the U.S., under the same circumstance, if we were being bombarded by Russian missiles, including in Washington, D.C., missiles and drone attacks from a Russian satellite in Canada with a puppet Russian leader, we would respond much more forcefully. We would probably be trying to invade and take over all of Canada, bombing their cities, bombing their military bases, and maybe even considering the use of a nuclear weapon over Ottawa to make them back down. So, I think Putin has behaved much more rationally than the average U.S. modern-day president would have under the same circumstances. And in some ways, overall, I think that's a good thing. I think that this is a very contrarian opinion that I wanted to express on your show. But, the U.S. has no discernible national interest in Ukraine or who wins the war in Ukraine. Our only national interest is to avoid World War III with Russia, to avoid nuclear escalation, and to end the war as soon as possible. And since Zelensky refuses to be a participant in ending the war peacefully or by other means, then then it's in the U.S. interest that Russia win. That's a crazy thing for a Western analyst to say, but if Russia were to win the war faster, the war would end. The nuclear escalation threat would end, and peace and stability would be restored to Europe. So when I say win, I don't mean that he would take over Ukraine, but that he would force Zelensky to agree to peace on Russia's up to now largely reasonable terms. And so, I don't view this as I know, most Western leaders view this as a proxy war between the U.S. and Russia, NATO and Russia, and it certainly is, but it shouldn't be. The U.S., again, has no national interest in who wins this war. It's become, it wasn't initially, but it's become a border dispute between Russia and Ukraine. And we shouldn't be risking the lives of 255 million Americans who would die in a nuclear or super EMP war with the Russian Federation over whose flag flies over the Donbass region, which is half Russian and it's half Ukrainian. You could argue either way. The popular referendum, if it was fully accurate, it would be a really close call. It could be that the people of the Donbass would vote for union with Russia, as they likely would today, with many Ukrainians having left. Or it could be they would want Ukraine. But there should be some reasonable discussions over, ending the war as soon as possible. And if we can't do it peacefully, then I just wish that Russia would, try to win faster, I guess.
Yeah, again, we're getting close to an hour, and I can't thank you enough for every single minute. Again, you're awesome, for doing this. I guess I have a couple more questions for you. And again, I'm going to put in my 5 cents again. For anyone that thinks that Putin or Russians want to destroy Ukraine, and their plans for Ukraine, I would suggest look up Mariupol today, but try to go to Google Translate and translate it into Russian and put in Mariupol today, so you can see what Russia has done in Mariupol, a city that was essentially almost all destroyed. I mean, it's not all, fancy and nice 100%, but they've done some unbelievable things there, which on the contrary, let's say a city like Bucha in Ukraine still, it's still ruins over there. So there's your difference. Who has a better interest for the Ukrainian people, Putin or Zelensky? So I have a couple more questions. Again, I cannot thank you enough. In your expertise, everything that you know in life, everything that you have read, everything that you have studied, what is your opinion, and if you would entertain this prophecy, like, are we truly headed towards a World War III, a nuclear war, or are we hopefully around the corner to a peace deal?
Prove to me that you are alive.